Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Orkney International Science Festival and Foraging Festival online. This year sees Orkney International Science Festival enter its 30th anniversary year, and we're delighted to be able to deliver a full festival programme to you wherever you are. Today I'm joined by Zoe Christiansen from the south of Norway, and unfortunately today we've had a few technical issues, so Zoe is only joining us by audio, but we can still have a conversation. And also I have Howie Firth, who's co-hosting. Hello Howie, how are you?
Hello Julie, fine, thank you.
How's the weather down in Elgin?
Well, a little bit overcast today, but I'm just imagining the view out there in Quailu when you stand outdoors and see the waves breaking in at the Bay of Scale.
Yes, I think there'll be plenty of waves today. And how are you, Zoe? Are you hearing us okay? How's things in South Norway?
Just fine, thank you very much. I hear you well.
That's good, glad to hear you. Okay, now Zoe Christiansen has a background in theatre and arts and is known in Scandinavia as the Seaweed Lady for her fascination with water greens around her beloved Norwegian coastlines. After years of researching recipes, Zoe took the plunge, literally with both feet, and in 2013 started the Northern Company, now an award-winning company in harvesting and selling seaweed products sustainably. Initially, met with skepticism in very much a niche market, things changed after an invite to Træna, a small island of about 500 people in an archipelago 30 nautical miles from the Norwegian mainland. Zoe became an artist in residence in Træna, known for its festivals, which was an ideal base for harvesting a forgotten resource, and it's very much near the Arctic Circle, with a plentiful variety of seaweed on their doorstep. Zoe opened a seaweed food lab to innovate and educate people on how to cook and eat seaweed. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. So to understand the processes and see the diversities and textures, you can view the video on the YouTube afterwards, and we'll put a link in the live chat. And if you've got any questions, put these into the live chat and we'll ask Zoe throughout the discussion. What an amazing location, Zoe. As a wild swimmer, I appreciate the colourful array of seaweeds and kelps of the Northern Atlantic. How did you start your journey? What was your sort of first ideas?
Well, it's very interesting how things start when, as you told, I have a background in the arts. And in 2012, I visited the Orkney Islands with a writer, an American writer. And we spent 2 weeks on the different small islands writing and getting inspired. The background was a performance called Passing Places. And we were to look at the ideas of the Vikings' search for Greenland or a better place to be. And so we were very surprised to discover a number of things in Orkney, especially the fact that there is a Norwegian link, which I was not aware of before I came. But also there is a history of seaweed, which I met several places. And we were also fascinated by the underwater world, which is very present both for energy, but also historically with all the big warships in the canal. And I moved on later to do the performance in Iceland, where people eat and have been eating seaweed since the age of the Vikings. And we think that the idea of using seaweed as food was brought by the Welsh monks to Iceland, and it has actually survived there as a food resources. And I also met several people who were harvesting seaweed and processing it. And I thought about seaweed as a metaphor for hidden treasures underneath the surface of the ocean. And it was a slight, it was not that I woke up one morning and thought, now I wanted to change my work and start doing business with seaweed. It was an interest that just grew on me. And then a wish to be more present in nature, to get out of the more enclosed and dark working spaces, which is theater, but bringing theater with me in the way that you collaborate with people, you meet different kinds of people, and you work as a group. And this was really the foundation to be able to start on an adventure like that, especially when we moved up to Træna and started harvesting there. As you probably know, coming from other small communities, you need to work with the people who are there, and you need to be friends with your neighbors. You need to accept differences. And we spent, I think we were welcomed by the community. We came from outside, most of us from bigger cities. A lot of students came up, or foodies from different parts, not only from Norway, but from other parts of Europe, because this is something, seaweed is something that fascinates people who want to look for new ways of to look at our food system, basically, because it's there's a lot of things that need changing in the food systems if we want to go forward into a sustainable future, which is
so I was going to say, Zoe, this is so interesting, because we were very much thinking about Orkney, how wonderful it would be to have an edible seaweed harvesting industry, and looking north to you and what you're doing in Træna. But you're saying, in fact, that the ideas developed like when you were going further south, and you actually spent time in Orkney on your journey of exploration.
That's true. We went, Orkney was the first place where we wrote a number of texts. Then we went to Lofoten, the north of Norway, just north of Træna, where I am now. And then we traveled on to Iceland and to Greenland. And finally, we went to the east coast of Canada. So it has been a fantastic journey, and a very challenging one, I would say, going from art to try and be aware of how money and business is working, because that is very connected to the food we eat. So, yes.
And could you just tell us something about the island of Træna? Because in Orkney, we are used to flat green islands, and looking at some of the pictures of Træna, it looks like there's very jagged rocks that are rising up quite steeply out of the sea. Is that a kind of fair impression?
Well, you have both kinds. The iconic landscape of Træna, it's called Sanna, or the crown of Sanna, because when you come by boat, you see these formations, the mountain formations, as a crown coming up from the sea. It's really magic. And you have other very interesting formations, but you also have flats, flat inlets and islands. And where we are harvesting the seaweed, it is indeed, in fact, on small islands that are normally covered by the ocean at high tides. and visible and accessible at low tide. So there you can enter a kind of garden of seaweed which has been washed clean at when the tide goes down, and that is when we harvest. There's a window of 3.5 hours, 2 times a day in the season where we harvest.
Zoe, we've got a question from Richard. What nutrients and minerals is seaweed particularly rich in?
Oh, it's very mineral rich. It has basically all the different kinds of minerals that your body needs. It is a sea plant. It also has iodine. It has vitamins and omega-3 and a number of really healthy things. It is considered a condensed superfood, and you have to be aware of how you use it in cooking, because if you use too much, you would actually get too much iodine in your food, which is not what you want. However, it's normally you think about seaweed as something you add to your cooking. You don't exchange your beef steak with a piece of seaweed. It's something you add. You add seaweed to your dish in order to enhance the whole thing, have a greater variety of different food items on your plate. And if you are a vegetarian or if you are a vegan, you know that you need to eat a variety of different food in order to have to get the kind of nutrients that you need. And seaweed is a very important and interesting addition to that. Yeah.
That's great, and I know that Orkney has got a long history with seaweed gathering of the tangles on the beaches, and there's a beach just not far from me that they used to do that. And looking back on the records, it certainly made a lot of money in taxes for Orkney. But what about the historical aspects, like from the Vikings? Do you know? I've got a question from Bill, and he's asking if the Vikings used the seaweed for other purposes, like weatherproofing or clothing in some sort of way.
I'm not sure of that. I know that especially the seaweed called dulce, it's a red, beautiful seaweed, was very valued by the Vikings. And they would normally say that you can read in the old text that you could exchange a barrel of dulce with 2 barrels of barley. So it had a high value. You could also pay your taxes with dulce. I don't know if they used it for other things. We think that they brought it on their ship journeys, and because of the high nutrition value, it prevented scurvy and other deficiency sicknesses. So
what ways would they preserve that? I know that you've been experimenting with lots of different processes.
They would be drying the seaweed. For the way people treat seaweed, both in Asia and around the Atlantic Ocean, is drying. That's the best way to preserve the seaweed. And you can also do a number of other things with it, but we're sure that the Vikings also dried it. They might have proceeded to ferment it, maybe not as a cooking technique, but something that might have happened because of the saltiness around the seaweed and change of temperature. When the seaweed is fermented, it's easier to chew, and it gets much more tasty, in my opinion.
Just wondering, Zoe, when you decided to start up a company like this, was there an existing market in Norway for seaweed products, or did you have to really pioneer?
Well, no, there were not a market at all. And I laugh. It's not really funny, actually, but it is, because I think it's with the background, my background as an artist, we didn't really think it was that important that there was not a market. We knew that there were not a market, but I was thrilled by the idea that we should introduce something that was completely unknown to people. And I didn't realize how difficult it is to make people change their habits, especially when it's linked to what you eat and food, what you consider food. And because I myself have this link to food, which is something that has opened up new worlds to me. I traveled a lot in my youth, and I knew about seaweed from Asia, from Japan, but also from a small travel to Wales, where I was introduced to something called lava bread in the 80s. And at that point, I didn't know at all that you had seaweed in the Atlantic Ocean, that was something you could eat. And coming back from the Orkneys, I was also thinking, but I thought, but maybe the seaweed in the Atlantic Ocean is not really eatable like it is in the Pacific. And then I contacted a number of marine biologists, and it quickly appeared that actually we have a lot of common seaweeds in the Atlantic Ocean, common to what you find in the Pacifics. Not all of them, but like the kelps, which is called kombu in Japan and Asia, and which is what I use in the film to create a soup fond. And you also see it in this picture now, where we have cut it up as tagliatelle. So this is just a great food resources. It's taste enhancing. You can do magic stuff with that, as they do in Asia, where they use it in all their soup fonds. It's called dashi. Now I lost my thread. Would you repeat the question? Yeah, it was if we knew that there was a market or not a market. We knew there were no market, but we thought that times are changing. We are going towards a new way of looking at many things, consumerism and food, and how we spend time together. Another thing I was very concerned about was the fact that a lot of families now don't eat together, or young people would just go to the supermarket and buy whatever sweet stuff for lunch instead of bringing food from home. And the whole thing about eating something, bringing people together, this representing values and ways of a common culture is or was getting lost. I see now a great movement, or a big movement, to reconsider food as something primal and not just something you add for energy. But it is still, for us, what we experience is that food is now dividing people into the category of people who have money enough to buy things that has been gathered and processed in an artisan way, and people who do not have the resources or do not consider this is important. So this is a political important issue.
Zoe, there's one more follow-up question I have before Julie's got more questions coming in from people watching. And it was about Træna, this island itself, because I think it's an island of 500 to 600 people. Now, some of the people listening to us today will be on small islands or islands about that size. And they'll be very curious about how this island actually developed the industry. Am I right in thinking that it was partly you going to the island, but partly the island approaching you?
Yes, it's a small island community of 500 people. The history is that they have a big history of fishing. So it's white fish and pelagic industry of fish. They only have those two pillars of work and economy. And at a moment, the community worried that what would happen if the fish was under pressure, and the people who now owned the fishing industry there, because that has been sold up to people abroad. And people were afraid that maybe that the base for livelihood would disappear. And they brought in a young woman to work on just trying to invite different kinds of people to their community. And they established something called Træna. That means think about what Træna could be. It's a web page, and I also write the link to that at the end of the movie that I sent to you, because this is interesting. You can go in and see the many different projects that has been started. They're trying to attract younger people. Of course, it's very attractive. Younger people with families, people who would like to start something, people who would start any kind of process involving the resources on this island, which is basically resources from the sea. But it could be seaweed, it could be a number of other things, as the sea is rich in resources that has not been really used, at least not in Norway. So like different kind of jellyfish and sea saucers and different kinds of shells, and people are getting more interested in eating other things than just salmon, which is in Norway, most of the fish is exported to different parts of Europe and Asia, because in Norway people don't eat a lot of fish, which is very I get really upset when I think about that, because the fish is just fantastic, the seafood is fantastic. When we are up there, we harvest and we fish and we dive, and there's so much food, so there are many possibilities. And seaweed was one of them. So this young woman sent me a letter or an email and said, would you come up and see if there's a possibility to do a seaweed business here on our small island? We're making a winter festival where we invite different people to come and meet, and maybe this could be something for you. And I was looking at the map, and it's far away. It's on the Arctic Circle. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is really like, it's a bit far away. And I wrote her and I said, okay, I'll come, because this is, I got the impression that the community wanted people coming from outside. And that's a very different situation than you come as a stranger and you want to do something, but nobody really wants you there. But in this case, there was this very open atmosphere on the island. I have to say that this is an island that is also renowned from a music festival that they do each year called the Træna Festival. And so this means that the island community is used to having visitors only for a certain number of days each July, but still this feeling of thinking that exchanging with people from abroad is a good thing. It's a way to grow. It's a way to, I mean, they have so much to offer us, and we have something we can offer back. So it's a good situation. I'm very grateful for what we have experienced up there.
Sounds like a great community that you've got there.
It's a great community. There really a lot of wonderful people. And when we come, we don't live on the island. You see it here now on the image. This is where we harvest. And that's where the islands are very, very flat and we can go on low tide. There's only 50 people living on that small island. And when we come, everybody knows that we're back and they call us the Seaweed people. And yeah, I have a feeling that they really want us there and they want us to stay. They want us to succeed. So even though there are lots of challenges linked to transport, logistics, of course, also it's a poor community. It's not a community with a lot of money. So everything is a little bit more complicated being on a small island. But on the other hand, you don't have to worry about anything else than just being there, doing your work and do it well. And I just love that feeling to be, everything is just simple in a way that I really appreciate. The purity of nature, the hardship and the simplicity of the work I also really appreciate, because I think we spend too much time in front of our computers. And to do this work for 3-4 months every year is something that does me and my team a lot of good.
That was a question that someone had, was, is it very much seasonal? Because I did see some of the videos on the website. It could get quite coarse with the winds, stormy weather, a bit like Orkney.
I can tell you, it's absolutely just as stormy as Orkney. And the thing is that we have a lot of pictures of very beautiful weather. It does happen sometime, but it's really not like that all the time. But the harvest season starts in March. March is really difficult weather. And as you see on this picture, is actually quite a beautiful gray sky, not too much wind. This is perfect for harvesting, actually. And then we continue April, May, and June. So we actually have 4 months of harvest, but different seaweed has different seasons. So we start with winged kelp, then we move on to sugar kelp, then it's sea spaghetti, and then it's a finger kelp at the end. And there are a lot of other small seaweeds that we can also harvest. The rest of the time we use our time making different products, exploring new recipes, because we quickly found out that we realized that there is no market for seaweed. We needed to do very interesting food in order to make people fall in love with seaweed. So we have been cooking a lot. We have been inviting people up there, different chefs who has been exploring seaweed and the wonderful other resources of fish and seafood. We have made films. We have invited to dinners. And made cookbooks. So this is what we also a very important part of the job, because of our interests in it, is to communicate about it. And it's possible that in some years you can start a seaweed business and just worry about harvesting your seaweed and finding a method for drying it or freezing it or whatever you want to do. But it is still not something that a lot of people eat. So you have to work really hard on communicating.
What would you recommend? And we've got Nick who asked a question, if we were thinking to do something like this in Orkney, who would you advise people speak to?
I would do a combination of local events and inviting interesting food people, food connoisseurs to come up, because Orkney is very is beautiful and inspiring for people who work with food, just as it has been not difficult at all to invite people to Træna because it's so spectacular. So if I invite a Michelin star chef to come up, he says yes, which is nice. And I just need to find him a really nice place to stay and a good kitchen. And then that's it, and pay for the travel. But that is fairly good if you want to attract people, and because people are interested in the presentation of exciting food. I would also recommend that people who do their products also find time to go to the big city communities. It's really important because that is where the customers are. So we go down south now. I am in Oslo, and this is where I meet all my customers. Without that, we would not be able to sell our products. But I control our products from the moment that we harvest, the production of different products, and onto the market where people sell it. If I had to do just half of it and just leave over my products to wholesaler, I have experienced that, and the experience is that the wholesalers don't really know how to take care of the product, because you need to be very you need to work a lot with marketing.
That's great, thank you. I don't know, when you were here in Orkney, did you have a chance to go to North Ronaldsay? Heather's asked about the sheep. You maybe know about the North Ronaldsay sheep, and they have a seaweed diet, and she wondered, do you use that in Norway at all? Do the sheep there, have that in their livestock feed?
Yes, indeed, they do. And this is when I did my research, I tried to find out if people have been eating seaweed, and I only found a few recipes. People have been reluctant talking about including seaweed in the diet because it was considered food for poor people. And but everybody tells stories about how the livestock has been eating seaweed, so the sheep, but also the cattle, and they have brought back seaweed and boiled it and fed it to the pigs. So this has been known as an important resource. Another thing is that you can use it as a fertilizer. It's really good for fertilizing your garden. So so it has historically along the coast of Norway, we have used that a lot, and all the coastal people know about that. And surprisingly, I've been people. People at Træna has been very interested in the seaweed as food, a little bit reluctant, but very interested because it's their seaweed. So it's not like if you come and you try to introduce an exotic fruit, or you want people to eat something from another country. This is a local resource, and that makes people proud, and it creates very strong feelings. So the other companies that has established themselves in Norway along the coast, there are quite a There's a number now. They all has this really strong feeling about the product, because it's it's this story about the treasure underneath the surface that nobody actually saw, but then suddenly you can see it. And you also find out that it has so many other ways of, it can be used in medicine, it can be used in cosmetics. So industrial wise, you have many ways of applying seaweeds. You can make, it's an alternative to plastic. I think there's quite some interesting companies in Scotland that work with seaweed. A company, I don't remember their name, but they are working on an alternative to plastic. I do believe that there is a couple of companies that also use seaweed as food. Yes.
Just to say, actually, I looked at your video, Zoe, and it's fascinating and it's extremely appetizing. I thought there was a lovely, now was it a kind of soup that you made, but it looked extremely appetizing.
Thank you, Howie. Yeah. Well, I love seaweed as an ingredient in food. I use it all the time because, you know, in cooking in Scandinavia, we often use something called a Maggi cube, which is like a condensed fond, that dry fond that you put into any kind of food to make it taste better. And basically, this is when you buy it in the shop, it's an industrial product and it has a lot of additives. But I'm interested in making soup fonds with seaweed and other dried ingredients because they are much more tasty. You get something which has a personal touch, which will return you to the idea of home cooking or the way your mother cooked, or you know. And now everything tastes more or less the same if you don't go to a very expensive restaurant where people use time on exactly that, making soup fonds, trying to transform simple ingredients into something very tasty. And that normally takes time. That's the thing. It takes time because you go in to processes like fermenting, you develop taste through controlling salinity and a number of things. So it's like alchemy. But the thing is that you can use raw material that is not very expensive. Like seaweed is a very simple ingredient. It's not like a lobster. But you can do so much with it. And I really love the fact that it's there, that anybody can actually go out and collect it. The reason that it is expensive now, fairly expensive to buy it in a shop, is that so few people eat it. So and because there's a lot of handwork involved, and that is not appreciated in our society. But it's there, as you see, and I think in Orkney there are lots of seaweed and probably also wonderful resources. And in Træna, indeed, and the whole coast of Norway has fantastic resources of seaweed.
That's great. And Richard has asked, what is it worth in revenue for the island? Not just your business, but like the workshops and, you know, people come into the island for your education?
The island has another, they have decided 4 pillars that they want to stand on, and one of them is ecotourism. So they want people to come and visit. And in order to attract people to the island, you need to have interesting things happening. You need to show that you also have culture, that the food is interesting, that people care about their environment, and people come to Træna to experience the nature and everything you find in the sea. A lot of divers come, but also to be also the fact that there is a community that likes to do things together. There are festivals, and there are a number of activities. And the activities that we do in the Northern Company is just some of these activities. So to be to make events, to get things in the local newspaper, to try and attract people to come and live in Træna, to bring in tax money. I suppose that's it, because if all the young people leave the small islands, then the islands cannot survive. You have to be attractive to young people, to families, and of course also to visitors. But basically, that the community, the people who live there all year, is a healthy community. And the things that has happened in the fish industry in Norway is that it's the people who work in the fish industry, not the people who are on the boats, they're still Norwegians, but the people who work in the industries, they come from Poland, from Russia, because most of the Norwegians don't want to they don't want that kind of work. So there's challenges if you want to actually create a society where real things are happening. It's not enough to be smart and make an interesting app, or just do to be very, very good at technology as people are in Norway. You actually have to go out there and collect food. If food is not on the table, food cannot be made in that way. And a lot of young people who come and harvest with us, they are, I think they get an impression of the work that goes into food. And if we only eat industrial food, I think we will be sick.
Well, that's amazing, Zoe. I'm sorry, we don't have time for any more questions, but people can still watch the video. The link is in the live chat, so people can still go and watch that after this discussion. Thank you, Zoe and Howie, for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you again, and thank you everyone for your participation online, and our technical team.
Thank you.
And a few housekeeping things. Our PD Kirk lunches still have some spaces. Please find the links for each lunch description on our website, and join us at a virtual table, and you can chat with some of the festival speakers. And do join us at the Festival Club tonight. You should be able to copy the link that will also be in the live chat. And remember to like our Facebook page and follow our YouTube channel if you like what you're seeing. And just finally, good morning, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you.